Hello, guys and gals, and welcome. So we finally got 2.7 patch notes, and we had a chance to go over them. We had a chance to do a lot of testing, and boy, let me tell you, there's a lot of changes. The next hit delay system being messed with has really done a number on pretty much everything. But before we go into that, let's talk about the patch note changes. Now, the patch notes were a little low on information. Because, well, there wasn't really a huge number of changes, but the changes that were there were actually pretty huge. Quite the contradiction. North America ladder launch is going to be May the 4th at 5 p.m. PDT, Europe May 5th, 2 a.m. CET, and Asia May 5th at 10 a.m. KST, which is about 8 o'clock Eastern Standard if you convert that. If you go down, they do talk about your ladder stash tabs. So if you have ladder stash tabs left over from Season 2, make sure you clear them out before ladder starts. Otherwise, everything in them will get deleted. When ladder Season 3 stash tabs move over to non-ladder for the past. And then basically the ladder Season 3 stash tabs are going to take the place of the Season 2, and the 2 are going to get deleted. So you've got like a day or two here. We get 4 additional character slots. That's a highlight from the patches. Definitely a very interesting one. I like having more character slots. I need more than 4. I definitely need more. I'm not going to complain about getting 4, but I would like more. They also added an interesting feature where basically when your character rolls from ladder to non-ladder, they reset your resets. So you will have access to all your Akara resets on your ladder characters after they fall off of ladder to non-ladder, even if you have previously used them, so that you can respec those characters on non-ladder if you want to. They also introduced an automated system to get rid of malicious messages within chat, which is nice because they're constantly spamming in there. I hope it works. Now, the biggest change by far is this one right here, which is the next hit delay system. And it seems really small, but we're going to be going over this one in detail soon. But basically what it did is it made individual events of next hit delay function separately for any situation where they might interfere. So next hit delay events no longer interfere with each other, which has made a whole lot of changes throughout the game, and it's going to be the focus of what we're covering at the end of this. They also changed the martial arts skills to have no interference with each other as well, so even the charges won't interfere with each other. Now, we did test this, and it does seem to be working, although there is a caveat, is that the Claws of Thunder ability doesn't seem to hit the target that you're actually attacking. So, like, the charged bolts from the actual ability don't hit the monster that you're kicking, but will hit everything around that monster. The knockback ability has been removed from the Bullcathos Sacred Charge, although when I checked it in the patch notes, in the game, it was not removed, so it was actually still there. I'm not sure if that means you have to actually find it, or if it's bugged, or what's going on, but the knockback effect was still there on the item that I had currently saved up. But not necessarily, I'm assuming maybe if you find it, could be different. The Druid shapeshifting was really freaking cool, and you can basically shapeshift in between forms now instantaneously, and we'll show that off really quickly. But it's very seamless, and it works very well. So if you want to shapeshift from werewolf to werebear, or werebear to werewolf, or werebear to human, or werewolf to human, it is a seamless transition now. You no longer have to go in between forms to make that happen, which is pretty darn cool. The assassin skills will now benefit from elemental skill damage. Apparently there was some sort of bug that was affecting them not being affected by elemental skill damage. So if you were using a Griffin's Eye diadem last season and you felt like it wasn't quite working properly, well, there's your answer, and it seems to be working properly now. They also fixed a bug with Mephisto. Apparently he was dropping lower TC classes than he was supposed to when he was terrorized. They fixed an issue where the assassin dying with martial arts charges could crash the game. And then they also fixed the resistance problem with the assassin traps. So this was something that was back in 2.6 and it failed, and then they did a hot fix online, and there was a whole bunch of stuff that they had to do. But basically they were able to get it under control in offline as well. So for those of you who are trap assassins who are trying to get that to work, good news, it works now. And I also have some more good news for you, trap assassins, in a little bit. A lot of this is pretty much just random stuff that's been fixed here. Nothing too super important. some messaging problems, various things with being fixed a problem where you could make rune words on non-ladder, stuff like that. Not a whole lot of really interesting information here. This modding thing is specifically for this, from what I can tell. So the ability to add the respecs. So basically, it's just an added command that allows the game to roll over the respecs, which is important. We're going to go into the game now, though, and I'm going to show you some of this stuff. So the first thing we're going to show off, of course, is the Druid shapeshifting form, which is really easy to show off. Obviously, it's pretty much just hopping in and transforming back and forth. And it really is honestly very seamless. So let me reset my character here real quick. And 1 point in both. And you can down transform still, like that hasn't changed. But if you press the werewolf, it just simply transforms you directly into the werewolf and directly into the bear. And it's a rather seamless transition. So using the metamorphosis helmet should be a hell of a lot easier now. Because you don't have to, obviously in the past, you had to down transform, then up transform, then down transform, then up transform to switch forms. It was a whole lot of button pressing for no reason. Didn't make any sense. So now you can literally just transform back and forth between the two forms seamlessly, which is absolutely excellent. So no big problem there. The other thing that they changed was the Bulcatho set. Like I said, when I checked it online, it still had the knockback. I don't know why. Mine still does. But that could just simply be because, maybe I need to find it again. There were some cases in the past where a previous version of the system would have the old stats, and then the new version would have the new stats. So maybe when you find a new one, it'll have the lack of the knockback, and maybe the old ones will retain the knockback. I'm not really entirely sure what's going on there. My beautiful lady's here. You want to come say hi? Come say hi. Come show off your little weird hairdos you always do. It's just a no, they're never regular hairdos. Spaghetti and meatballs. Now, the bulk of the changes for this patch come in with the next hit delay. All right, it's massive. You might want to get a freaking notepad or a pen and a piece of paper here because this is pretty ridiculous. So what has been affected by the next hit delay changes as far as we have tested it so far? Number one, the martial arts assassin was definitely affected. The damage output from adding the Claws of Thunder into things has made things about, I think it was about 33% faster or something like that. It was interesting to find out that Claws of Thunder, the charge bolts don't actually hit the target. But when I used it in Chaos Sanctuary, cows, things like that, the charged bolts were freaking massive. And they just went across the entire freaking screen. Very, very high damage output now from the Martial Arts Assassin. Not like the Martial Arts Assassin wasn't already high damage output, but she's even more high damage output now. But there were some unexpected changes, and this is very interesting. So one of the changes that happened that was kind of unexpected that I had never thought was going to be an issue was the Wake of Fire. Wake of Fire is ridiculously strong now. So let me show you right now before I do this. Let's put this on Players 8. And we are going to go into, I don't know, River of Flame. All right. So what I think happened with Wake of Fire is that each trap is under its own next hit delay event. Before, because next hit delay events would interfere with each other, the problem with this is that when you cast 5 traps, each of the traps were interfering with each other. But in the changes, they made all next hit delay events separate, right? So the traps seem to be functioning separately under the next hit delay events, which means that each trap is able to hit the monsters of its own volition, which equals some pretty crazy AoE damage output. So when you actually apply this to monsters, the result is actually pretty darn amazing. And I think, yeah. This is P8. I just absolutely annihilated these P8 monsters. It's actually pretty impressive, the amount of damage that this does now. It seems to be a combination of just all the effects able to hit the target at the same time, as opposed to them constantly being next hit delayed away. Because that's basically what was happening before, is that despite the fact that you were casting 5 traps, they weren't actually all hitting the target. So Wake of Fire has seen some pretty crazy buffs, and it might be an interesting starter class for the next latter season. But that's not all. So Shockweb also got affected, and you can actually tag that in now, so that's pretty damn cool. We tested this in P8 cows and all sorts of things, and it was actually pretty impressive. On top of this, there was also some unexpected changes. So this one is probably the most controversial in my opinion, because I don't necessarily think this class, the Sorceress or the Amazon, really needed a buff. They were already pretty powerful. But because of the way that Lightning Strike and Chain Lightning affect monsters, there is a damage increase also to Chain Lightning and Lightning Strike. So what happens is when Chain Lightning hits a monster, it hits that monster and then it seeks another monster, okay? If the monster is under a next hit delay event, it will not choose that monster, and instead it chooses a different monster that is not under a next hit delay event. In the current patch, with the way that they changed the next hit delay, what's happening is the Chain Lightning is acting as a separate event each time you cast it. And each Chain Lightning is capable of continuing its bounce, despite the fact that another Chain Lightning may have recently hit that target, which has enabled you to be able to spam Lightning Strike and Chain Lightning on a group of monsters with pretty drastic effect. And I'm going to show you kind of like what that looks like here. I also have a Sorceress set up as well, so we'll show that as well. But let me do the Amazon first here. And I want you to kind of see what the hell's going on. Notice how at one point there, it seemed like I had like 6 or 7 Chain Lightnings all bouncing in between the targets all at the same time. And during that moment when all the Chain Lightnings were bouncing between all the targets at the same time, the damage was just crazy. Normally, you can't have multiple Chain Lightnings bouncing within a group at the same time. What would happen in the past is the Chain Lightning would try to bounce. It would fail because there were no active targets available that were not under next hit delay. And the more times you cast Chain Lightning, the less Chain Lightning would actually work because it only bounces a certain number of times. Lightning Strike bounces 46 times. So when you use it one time, it will continually bounce through all of the targets in succession. And I can kind of show you how that works here just by using one Chain Lightning. Let's see here. We need a big group to take advantage of Chain Lightning. So if I just use one Chain Lightning, you notice it bounces back and forth between all the monsters. It takes a while. It hits multiple times, right? But that wasn't hardly any damage compared to this. Multiple Chain Lightning events, all bouncing back and forth between the monsters repeatedly until they all die. Chain Lightning and Lightning Strike have both gotten a pretty insane buff, and damage-wise, I don't want to say Chain Lightning was ever the most amazing skill, and I think that's kind of important to say here, because Chain Lightning was never really that amazing. Lightning was good, but Chain Lightning was always kind of like fire it once, like at the beginning of your attack, let it do its thing, and then, you know, while it's doing its thing, then you would potentially, you know, get your... You know, you'd fire another one once it was finished. Like, you wouldn't really go through the process of firing multiple Chain Lightnings, because the problem is is that they would just overwrite each other, and so there was no point in firing multiple chain lightnings. Well, now you can. Now you can literally just sit there and you can just spam chain lightnings into a group of monsters, and it has a pretty damn ridiculous effect. So, like, for instance, with this particular character, I can just spam the chain lightnings into the group, and notice the entire group is already dead. Like, I don't even have to worry about it. You just spam the chain lightnings in, and they will just continually bounce. Now, if there's no targets to bounce off of, it can't bounce. So that's the only situation where it's not going to really do what you think it's going to do. But as long as there's a monster to bounce off of, the chain lightning just seems to almost just continually bounce now. There's no stopping it, essentially. It's just going to keep bouncing and keep bouncing and keep bouncing. And honestly, this makes for some pretty interesting builds that might revolve around like 200% chain lightning builds or something crazy like that. Even further than this, so we went testing even further, is that there's other abilities that seem to be affected. So we pulled up the sheet and we were looking at the various skills and we were trying to figure out like which abilities might be affected by the next hit delay the most. And one of the things that we looked at was, well, why is there 1, 2, 3 different Nova entries? And we got the idea that perhaps Nova could also be affected. So we started to do some testing. We also had some people throwing in their weight in the chat. Daddy Glock 35 also tested for us. And we were able to find out that, yes, Nova is also affected by this. Apparently something's going on, I think, with the larger monsters and the cast rate, where basically the Nova entries, each individual Nova entry, which seems to be on a separate next hit delay calculation, seems to be hitting the monster in between attacks or something. So when we tested it, we did a couple different tests, and what we found out was that Nova was killing the monsters about 33% faster. Like, it didn't seem like a massive degree, but like when you killed Diablo, for instance, Daddy Glock said that before he would kill Diablo at about 6 Novas after static. Now it's 4 Novas after static. So literally a 33% increase in essentially the damage output of Nova. Because I think what's happening is each one of the next hit delay events is hitting the targets separately. They're on 4-frame delays, and you can only cast at a, 7-frame attack speed. But there's probably at least 1 or 2 of the Novas that seems to be hitting the target multiple times as it's passing through them. I'm assuming it has to do with the size of the monster. So the size 3 monsters are probably the ones that are hitting multiple times by the Novas. This also means that if Nova is also being affected, then the Nova on Claws of Thunder is also being affected, which means that size 3 monsters and things like that could potentially be getting hit multiple times by Claws of Thunder as well. Just the Nova part of the Claws of Thunder, though, not the Charged Bolt or the Lightning. This might require more testing, but when I tested it on Uber Diablo in P8, which is where I tested it before, there was a considerable increase when combining Phoenix Strike with Claws of Thunder, but not a considerable increase when combining Nova with Charged Bolt. And that had to do with the fact that the Charged Bolts didn't seem to actually be hitting him, which was a little strange. I'm trying to think what else, because we went over like so many different things, testing so much different stuff. I don't want to leave out the Amazon. The Amazon's changes are not going to have any effect right now. They will have an effect in the future. So the multi-shot and the strafe changes when you're playing with a group are going to have a effect on your total damage output inside of group content, but they shouldn't have any effect on your single-player damage content, which is, it's par for the course. So multi-shot and strafe are going to dish out a lot more damage when you're playing with groups and with other people. Also, the Fissure and the Hurricane Druid. So we tested out both of those, and I was pretty impressed with the damage increase on the Volcano. So Volcano and Fissure can actually stack together now, which is pretty powerful. Volcano does have that horrible 4-second casting delay, which makes it a little bit difficult to spam, but you can use Fissure and Volcano at the same time, which is pretty crazy. Also, Twister and Tornado were pretty easily spammable at the same time, which was very nice. And this is going to have PvP connotations because obviously Twister has that really nice micro stun. So if you cap out your Arctic Blast and you use your capped out Twister, you're going to have a nice 2-second stun length duration on those Twisters, which means that when you have a Druid telestomping you in PvP, there's a very good chance he's probably going to fire off a Twister pack before he fires off his Tornado, which is not something he would have done in the past because there's a very good chance that the Tornado would have suffered from the next hit delay problems and not hit you. But now you can fire off those Twisters in PvP and fire off the Tornado directly afterward and stun them and lock them in place, which is going to make the Hurricane Druid even more powerful in PvP. And in PvE, firing off the Twisters is going to equal off extra stun length duration, and it's not going to interfere with your damage output, which is absolutely excellent. Both very good changes. Both of these are freaking excellent, in my opinion. I'm probably going to start Volcano Druid, but I'm going to be honest with you. The ridiculous comeback queen here, in my opinion, is the freaking Wake of Fire Assassin. The Wake of Fire Assassin, for some reason, has now literally risen way above a level that they were ever capable of before. I've tested the Wake of Fire Assassin on many occasions, tried to make the Wake of Fire Assassin work, and although she was like... I mean, I guess maybe you could do it if you really wanted to. Like, it wasn't like the ridiculousest build, but it was okay. She's in a spot now where literally she can do P8 content by herself with proper gear, and it's fast enough that I consider that to be a win. And not only that, but Wake of Fire has always been extremely powerful early game, and I'm assuming it's going to be even more powerful as an early game starter build now, because if it can do P8 hell content with a relatively good speed, imagine how well it's going to work in like P1 normal or P1 nightmare. It's going to freaking rip through it. The only real downside here, of course, is that it's fire damage. So you're going to be stuck in a situation where you are going to need that fire sunder, and it might, might be an issue. Shockweb, however, is something that you could potentially add into this build, and it does do a pretty decent amount of lightning damage, and it also doesn't interfere with anything else anymore, which is interesting. So it could help you kill those monsters that are fire immune while you're leveling up. Who knows? It does help out Fire Blast considerably, so you do get a pretty nice little damage bump there on your Fire Blast, which honestly, Fire Blast is pretty damn powerful when you get it all capped out. I want to make sure I don't miss anything because there's tons of different things going on here with next hit delay. Warcry Barbarian shouldn't have been affected damage-wise, but will get a bump like in groups. There's only one entry in here for Warcry as far as I can see, and basically it requires multiple entries to actually have an effect. Now, one thing I didn't get to check is like all the monsters in the game, because there's tons of monsters in the game that fire various effects, and all these monsters are going to obviously hit a little bit harder now because they can hit you multiple times. That's something that we're going to have to test for a while before we can get a really good feel for how much damage the monsters are putting out, especially monsters like Bale, Mephisto, even Diablo, which also has an entry in here for his fire. All of these effects apparently have next hit delay on them, and they're all going to get affected by the next hit delay changes. Anyway, I didn't want to make this video too ridiculously long since it's a recap, but if you have any questions, feel free to put them down in the comments, and let me know what you think of the massive, ridiculous next hit delay changes. I know a lot of you guys are probably disappointed because there's not like a million changes within the system, but, basically we've got a huge change that literally affects everything within the game, and I guarantee you that something is going to pique your interest, because there is a ton of stuff that has changed throughout the entire game. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when it's just me yakking about the patch notes, and as always, keep watching.